And Josh will let us know. Oh, it
Okay,
looks
yeah,
like
we're
the
started.
recording
It
has
said,
begun.
it said it's done. Okay, welcome everybody. This is Tom Frank, Chair, and and I'm trying to say where. Oh, I got to turn off my speech on my phone because it's talking to me and everything. Every message that comes in, it reads it. Okay, am I still there?
Yeah, you're here.
Okay. Anyway, sorry. Okay, Tom Frank, Chair. Let's go around and everybody from the board introduce themselves.
Okay, I can go next, Tom, if you want.
Yep, please.
Adrian Katz. I work for the state of Vermont in the Natural Resources Board. So I'm handling digital files and physical files for Act 250. And previously I worked as a librarian for the St. Johnsbury Athenaeum. And I've been on the board for maybe 4 or 5 years. I've been along the same time as James. So I've been here for a couple of years and vice chair. Thank you so much.
Okay, next. Anybody, just speak.
James Saunders, and I live in the Berry Plainfield area. I'm originally from Virginia. I'm a professor emeritus. I don't know what I'd say I've ever been literally a librarian, but I consider libraries my home, so that I'm close to it anyway. And right now, currently, I live in Plainfield.
Okay, thank you, James. Okay, next we have
Jennifer Fells from North Bennington, Vermont. This is only my second meeting, so I'm still getting my feet wet. And I am retired from the Southwestern Vermont Medical Center, and I was board chair at the John G. McCullough Free Library for 3 years, and I'm no longer on that board.
Okay, so now you're with us, and we have the Southern contingent. Finally, we have somebody. Okay, is that Rick? You're there?
We're unable to hear you, Rick.
There you go. I think you're on
Okay.
now. Whoops, I thought you were. Teams is backward from Zoom because video is first and mute and unmute is next.
Yeah, Rick is unmuted, but we're not hearing him. So maybe, Josh, can you help him troubleshoot?
Okay, Josh will help you.
I think Rick, try now because I see that you're unmuted.
Oh.
He's been unmuted. There's just something going wrong. Rick, I'll put your phone number in a private chat to Josh so that he can connect with you.
Okay, that's Rick Bates. Okay, and then we have Lisa.
Yep, Lisa Barron. I am the Director of Human Resources at Gifford Hospital in Randolph, and this is my second meeting as well. I was on the board of trustees for the Milton Public Library for 6 years, and I'm looking forward to this meeting.
Very good. Who did I miss? Linda's on the road. She had a meeting in New York and she's traveling now.
I think that everyone from the board has has introduced
Kathy,
themselves.
if you could introduce
Sure.
the library board, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, I'll introduce folks from the department. My name's Catherine Delnao. I go by Catherine or Kathy, either is fine. I am the state librarian and the commissioner of the Department of Libraries. And in the interest of time, I'll just share which other staff from our team are here today at the meeting. You've already seen Josh Muse on camera. Josh is our technology consultant, and he is helping folks with on-site access to the meeting. Jeanette Schaefer, Assistant State Librarian for Library Advancement, is with us this morning at this time. Good morning, Jeanette. And we'll likely be seeing, oh, Tom arrived just as I said we would likely be seeing him. So Assistant State Librarian for Info and Access, Tom McMurdo, has just joined the call. We also have Lily Talbert, who is stepping in to take minutes. I'm the secretary, but I always appreciate some help with the minutes. I take notes, and so does one of our staff, and Lily is doing that today, and she's our communications person in the team. We also, I see that Kevin Unrath is on the call
Hello.
this morning. And we
Here.
can now hear
Yep.
Rick.
The speaker.
Okay, Rick.
Okay, so Rick, I'll just finish
I-
introducing the department and then we'll bring it back to you so you can greet everyone.
I also made a change within my.
Okay.
Now you're
You're
muted now.
Yeah. You probably muted him. Yeah, so we can't hear him.
Okay,
Josh can't
so
hold his phone. Okay.
let me just go back to where I was in the introductions. Kevin Unrath is here. Kevin's our consultant for operations at the department. He's in the library advancement team. Good morning, Kevin. I like your winter sweater. And we have Joy Warland here this morning. Joy is our small and rurals library consultant and also is our continuing education coordinator and consultant for the Department of Libraries. Joy's also in the library advancement team, as is Karen Gravlin, who's with us today, and may join me if you have questions about our ABLE library. Karen's the ABLE library director. She's also the consultant for inclusive services for the department. And I believe April Shaw is here today as well. April is our department's loan reference librarian, but April also coordinates interlibrary loan and is part of the information and access team. Info and access is also represented this morning by Lauren Kelly, our cataloging consultant who just joined us. Good morning, Lauren. And I think I've gotten everybody from the department who's here. So I'm going to turn it back to Rick, who I believe is unmuted now. And we did hear that he can speak. So Rick, would you like to introduce yourself? Rick's a board member for those following along.
Okay. Hi. I'm going to make sure. Are you hearing me now?
We
Yes,
are
Rick.
hearing you.
Loud
Yes,
and
Rick.
clear.
Then I'm going to turn off the phone and hope you can continue to hear me. It
Okay.
appears it was a setting within the preferences on my laptop that was the
Right.
issue, and I sorted it. I'm Rick Bates. I'm retired from running probation and parole offices in the southern part of the state. I'm the chair of the Wethersfield Proctor Library Board, and I entertain myself in retirement by editing an online poetry journal, which is actually now online and in print as of the last issue. Big step for us. Us being the royal we, I do the whole thing. Anyway, that's me. I live in Perkinsville. I grew up in Chester. So the South is now represented by two.
Two.
Great.
Southeast
I'm
and
glad
southwest.
that you are with
Yeah.
us.
Thank you.
Okay. Did we miss anybody from the department? And now I'm hearing myself numerous times here. Okay, that was fixed. Okay. Are there any changes to the agenda? That's the next thing. Am I still here? Can you hear me?
You're still here. We can hear you. And I don't see anyone raising their hand or suggesting any changes to the agenda.
Okay, no changes.
Oh,
to
I
the-
also want to
Oh.
mention, I missed a staff member who is here from the department. I just scrolled up. Jonathan Clark, our youth services consultant, is also with us this morning. Thanks for joining us, Jonathan.
Welcome, Jonathan. Okay, so are there any members of the public that we have not spoken from the public here that wish to speak on any topic? I guess not. If not,
I don't
let's
see
go on.
any.
That was no unused names or telephone numbers.
No, we don't see. I'm looking at the participant list now, and I think everyone who is here is either a member of the department or a member of the board. I
Of
don't
the
see any
board.
members of the public in the meeting.
Oh, okay. Okay, the next one is approval of the minutes of the last board meeting. And once again, I like to thank that they get posted very timely. That's good with all the problems going on administratively and support. It's nice to have those minutes in a timely manner.
Yes, and public and posted publicly on the Department of Libraries website so that anybody, including members of the board or the public, can access them in a timely way.
Okay, so I reread them the other day and I didn't see any issues. Bruce Post is, and I wasn't going for commas and all of that, which is Bruce's forte. He's no longer on the board. That anybody else have any? Well, do I have a motion to approve the minutes, and then I'll ask if there are any changes or modifications.
I think I see Rick raising his hand.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll unmute myself to quickly say I will move that we accept the minutes of the last meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll
I don't
second.
even know. Okay, it's been moved and second to approve the minute. Now, are there any additions or corrections to the minutes that you know of? So if not, all in favor of approving the minutes from our October meeting, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Kathy would likely to give up the job. So no opposition. So it passed unanimously. And I got to read down. Come on, talk to me, phone, computer. Changes to the agenda. Changes to the. Public comment.
Next planet HG new line. Bullet election of officers.
Election of officers. We only have 2 officers, chair, which I am, and vice chair, Adrian. And let's see. Since it's a chair, I'll turn it over to, let's see, who's got the most seniority here? James? Can you do the election? Because I can't, because I'm chair.
I guess I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to.
Right now on the agenda, we have to choose the officers, which are only the chair and vice chair. And since I'm chair, I can't run that election. So I would just say that if you could run, just ask if there are any nominations for the committee and then take a vote.
Are there any nominations for the committee?
Should we do nominations for chair first
For
and then
chair. Yeah,
nominations
just for chair
for-
first. And then I can, yeah, after that, then I can get back on for vice chair, just for chair.
Okay. Rick,
Rick,
I nominate Tom Frank as chair of the board.
Second.
I think technically there isn't a need for a second. I think we vote. But if there are no other nominations,
so then
If that-
should we have, I'm sorry, I just want to, it's a little bit confusing. So especially for new members. So am I correct in thinking that the next step is that James calls for a vote on the president if there are no further nominations?
Yeah, should say that 3 times. I learned that from listening to the legislature. If there were any other nominations.
are there any other nominations in addition to Tom Frank? If not, then I move that we go ahead and vote on our candidate. All in favor, say yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Aye.
yes,
Yes.
yeah.
All opposed, say nay. With none opposed, I suggest that we go ahead and have Mr. Frank again as our chair.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And I think that on our bylaws, is there a limit to you have 2 years for a
Yes.
position? Yeah, 2
Yes.
years. So this would be my second year, so that would be it. And I believe I'm off anyway. I think I've done
Mhm.
my 8-year bit. So you need to start thinking now as we're going on, what you want the leadership to be in the
Right.
future. So now I can take it back over. Now we're going to do nominations for vice chair. Our current vice chair is Adrian Katz. And so I'll ask, are there nominations for vice chair?
I, oh, go ahead, Rick. Did you may have the honors before me.
Your turn.
I was going to say that I move that we nominate our current vice chair, Adrian Katz.
Thank you.
Oh,
I accept
I
the nomination.
second that.
okay. We have Adrian Katz as nomination. So then I'll ask, are there any other nominations for vice chair? If hearing none, then I'll call for the vote. All in favor of Adrian Katz as our vice chair, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that's good. Congratulations or condolences, whichever case you want to do there, Adrian.
It'll be good to work
Adrian
with
was
you again, Tom. Yeah.
and Adrian feels free to call me at 8:30 last night and said, by the way, some of those documents are on the in the agenda. So I was able to read the documents last night. And that's why I appreciate that. She keeps me in line. Let's put it that way. If I miss something, don't worry, I hear about it. So that's good.
Yes.
And
It's
that's what the
important
vice
that the chair
president.
has that information.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
really
that's
okay. We can talk about
yeah.
that at the
And I really
appropriate time.
appreciate. Yeah. Okay. Now the next thing.
Tom?
Let me. Yes.
Tom, I want to interrupt for just one moment. I've shared a link to the bylaws, both for the public and for the members of the board who may not be familiar with them. So the link is in the chat thread right now. It's also always available on the Board of Libraries website below the membership. And if I'm reading it correctly, regarding the question of terms of office, on page 2, it states, Section 2, Terms of Office. The terms of office for the chair and vice chair shall be for 1 year from the election at the annual meeting or until a successor is elected. No officer shall be elected to the same office for more than 3 successive full
3
terms. So it's 3,
okay,
not
3.
2. I was fuzzy on that detail, so I wanted to make sure I
Okay.
knew it, and that's what your bylaws state. So
Okay. Very good.
Adrian
Right.
or you could
And-
continue to serve. Well, you'll roll off the board,
I'll
but
be off
Adrian could
anyway.
continue
So yeah.
for 1 more year. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Yeah. Yeah, but it's a clarification with the 2 successive terms for serving the Board of Libraries versus the 1-year election of a position such as chair or vice chair.
Right.
So
And
3
for
terms
the
versus 2.
yeah, for the new members, I would point out that there is light at the end of the tunnel, because before before Kathy came and figured out the best way to do it and posting the positions when you're going off, like mine will post the position like 6 months ahead of the vacancy. Therefore, you have plenty of folks to interview and, choose from to be on the board and not having to serve for, 9, 10, 11 years because we didn't have anybody to fill those positions. And I think
Also,
yeah.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
It's also because people are filling unfulfilled terms
Yes.
that prolongs.
Right.
Yeah. And if you fill, yeah, and there weren't, so everybody here, I believe, is new. So basically you have the 8 years, but if anybody leaves and we fill that in, that time does not count until, yes.
May I take just a minute to share what our roster has as far as the date of the expiration of various members? I
Very-
think it would be
very
a good
good.
idea to do that so we as a board, so you as a board can plan for
Right.
the succession of folks. The person whose term will expire next is Linda. Linda's term expires, her first term expires at the end of February, 2/28/24. So Linda, if she's open to continuing, could serve a second term. And then, Tom, you're right that your term will expire, your second term will expire 2/28/25. So next, not this February, but the 2025 end of February. And after that, we have Adrian's second term will expire at the end of 2027, February 28th, 2027, as will James's. Both Adrian and James's terms will expire at the last day of February 2027. And then our first term folks, those of you who just joined the board, so Lisa, Rick, and Jennifer, your first term will expire on the 11th of July, 2027. So for those whose first term will expire at the end of, in the middle of July 2027, you'll have the option to renew if you choose. And typically we do see that folks will be reappointed. There is a reappointment process and I'll work with the governor's office on that and check on your interest in renewing. So I'll reach out to Linda to check on Linda's interest in renewing. If somebody's interest changes or they move or whatever, these terms could be abbreviated. And as some folks were saying, we've seen situations like recently where I was a new state librarian and our capacity to change over the board was a little bit hampered and our understanding of how to do that was slightly fuzzy. So we did have some folks continue on for additional time because board members serve at the pleasure of the governor until someone comes along and replaces them. So sometimes we can try to line it up better by doing advanced recruitment. But sometimes we'll slip on that a little bit based on what's going on with the department's work.
And now that you have a good contact over there, you can talk, see if Linda wants to renew, which I assume she does, and then submit that to the governor's office for a reappointment. But she'll serve until he says no, and we find somebody else. I'm sure he'll say yes. But so there won't be any vacancies. That's a nice position to have.
I see Adrian has her hand raised, Tom.
Okay, Adrian?
Yeah. Just to clarify, so James and I entered on our first term. We were not fulfilling any expired terms. I wasn't here before, so just to clarify. So, okay.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Get my computer to talk. Oh, per diem compensation. Yes. If there's nothing else on this area, per diem.
Great. So right now, I'm just going to mention we're 36 minutes into the agenda so that our note taker can kind of grab that timestamp.
Oh, okay.
I am going to, if it's okay with the chair, I'll pull up a screen to share with you all with one of the forms that we've posted online. This is a state form. Hold on a second. There we go. Try to make it bigger for you. There is a process for board members to submit a personal expense claim related to their attendance at our Board of Libraries meetings. So each member of the board may be eligible for a $50 per diem compensation for attendance at our meeting, our monthly meeting. What I've shared with folks by email and also by posting it this morning on the Board of Libraries webpage is a form that I believe is form AAF 68. And please note that this is not a form to be used by state of Vermont employees. So this applies to everyone on the board, with the exception of Adrian, who is now a state of Vermont employee. State of Vermont employees have a different process for personal expenses. And if they're attending a meeting while being compensated, then I don't believe they would be eligible for the per diem, but we can connect about that separately, Adrian, for those specifics. We don't typically have a state of Vermont employee on our board, but in this case we do. So this would apply to the chair, Tom Frank, and to all of the other board members. What I've done to hopefully make it a little bit easier for you is I've mocked up the form with some of the information that will not change. Some of the information in this Excel sheet will change, such as your individual name in line 5, your individual town of residence also in line 5. If you're filling out this form, which is you would put down that you are filling it out because you are a member of the board of the Vermont Board of Libraries. So that would be department, board, or commission, Vermont Board of Libraries. You would put your address in it, your home address, and your position title would be Board of Libraries member for the majority of you. For Tom, you would change that to Board of Libraries chair. For the ease of filling things out, what I've done is to just put the dates of all 4 of our regularly scheduled quarterly meetings. So January 9th, 2024, today, 4/9/24, which is our April meeting, 7/9/24, which I believe is our July meeting, and then our October meeting, 10/8/24. Each of those is on a separate line in this template. Typically, people wouldn't wait until the end of the year, until the end of the October meeting. You could submit one of these each time. And so on line 12, I'll just go across and show you what it looks like on the screen. Line 12, you'd fill out the date. You would explain that we had a meeting, Board of Libraries meeting. This is the per diem compensation, $50. So your total would be $50. If we happened to do an in-person meeting, you could also submit mileage, and then we would calculate the amount. We're not going to do overnight meetings at expensive lodges or big fancy meals. So we'll, I would say typically you would be submitting for reimbursement if we did an in-person meeting, and also for the $50 per diem. If for some reason the board adds a meeting to our schedule, for example, if we needed to add a meeting to address a petition for a geographic naming topic, then you would also be able to get the per diem compensation for that meeting. If there were a rare subcommittee meeting of the board, then my understanding is you could also get a subcommittee reimbursement. I want to share that you are not required to submit this. Some folks find this really easy and they feel it's appropriate to submit it. Some folks, depending on if you're being compensated already in some other way, I don't think anybody in this board except Adrian could be in that situation. But I think, if you have a question about whether you're entitled to receive compensation for this, please let me know. My sense is that Board of Libraries members are all eligible, unless they're a state of Vermont employee, to use this form and get this $50 compensation. And depending on how they might be coding their time as a state of Vermont employee, there could be eligibility there. I would prefer to have these filled out once immediately after the meeting so that we can process them all together. That's the easiest way to do it. Certainly within the same month is preferred, because we try to get the money spent in the same year and even in the same month when we can. So what you would do is to fill out this form, and then you would sign the form down in the 25-26 line, and we would you would share it with me, you would date it, and then I would approve it and I would submit it to finance, and you would receive a check. And I know that this usually goes well. Every once in a while, there can be a hiccup because each of you has your own number with the state. So we do need to make sure that you're in the state's payment system. And when we're processing a lot of these, there have been mistakes. There's even been a mistake this past year, from what I understand. When Gina was processing one of the forms, it went to the wrong person. And so typically it works very smoothly though. But that's how it works. So for example, if you submit a check if you submit a form for $50 and you get a check for $75, flag us because something went sideways. But typically the reimbursement is $50 for our board members per meeting. And I will share information with you by email to follow up on this very brief training. And if anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer them now, or we can set up a time to talk about it. It's just a
Yeah, I
procedural
have-
thing.
Yeah, I have one thing. Can you hear the dog barking in the background from me?
Vaguely. It's not
Vague.
distracting though.
Okay, because these are sort of microphone noise canceling, and I just closed the door in the other room. So, okay. Then the other thing is the state has done electronic signatures. So I don't know how they'll do that. If they do, they'll require it. You got to fill out a form and blah, 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 and do electronic signatures.
We
I don't
can
know what they're
also
doing now,
send
Kathy.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can also send things by DocuSign if that's easier for folks to just click on signing for themselves. But typically what we've been doing is we accept these by email, and then people have actually hand signed it in most cases, and then we
Okay.
process the payment.
Okay.
And for people who just joined and attended a meeting in October, and for whom this may be the first time you're hearing about this, or even for board members who have been on for a while and this is the first time you're hearing about this, you can submit you could submit the October meeting attendance as well. I just started with this meeting on my example. So using the same process, if you wish to submit for reimbursement for the per diem of $50 for the October meeting, then I would gladly help with processing that paperwork, as with the rest of our team.
There you
Are
go.
there any questions? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that then.
I always say if you feel guilty, you can take the money and give it to your local library.
Yeah.
Don't feel guilty. It's not,
don't.
The state
right.
wants to compensate people for their service, and it's totally appropriate to
Yeah.
request the funds.
Absolutely.
New line. Bullet draft collection development
Right.
statement.
Okay.
New line. A. Bullet
Yeah.
draft
And Kathy, you
Okay,
have
great.
records of like all the
draft
different
collection development
members.
statement. New line. Bullet
Yeah.
draft collection
Yeah,
development
our
statement.
department follows the state of Vermont's processes for invoices and per diems, and we keep records on hand per the records retention schedule. So we should have records of all of those things going back. It has been a little bit challenging, to Tom's point, because we've had some transition. So I know what our practice is currently and what my expectation is currently for our finances. But if somebody had a question about had they received payment in the past, we should be able to find that using our vision system and looking up your individual code that board members have been issued.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. Any other questions? If not, we'll go over to collection development. And the delay on the agenda is partially my fault because Kathy has sent it to me at the beginning, near the beginning of last week, which was probably Tuesday because Monday was a holiday. And she reminded me on Friday I hadn't said, and I said, collection development, does that include developing money, or could you explain that a little bit better? And she said, if it was collecting money, she'd be out of here. So that was not, I'm on other boards, whenever they say development, it means, okay, get out your checkbook or get people that'll get out their checkbook. So I said, I'm not a librarian. So collection development, she defined very well. And so if you could take it, Kathy, and we'll talk about our collection development policies, and which you just dealt with yesterday, I understand.
Oh, yeah. Well, we are at the department, we are really looking at the recommendations of the working group on the status of libraries in Vermont. And we have a really thoughtful team here, and our team wants to be proactive about having an updated collection development policy for our department. That policy would really guide us in selecting materials for inclusion in the state library, in the Able Library. Those materials would include things in the Vermontiana field. In the state library, they would include the materials that our youth services consultant selects, that our inclusive services consultant collects. It would include all of the materials in our physical collection, but also our virtual collections. So our and audio collections, our ebooks and our audiobooks. They'd also include the materials in a broad sense, as far as when we're making decisions about which databases and services to provide to our public in Vermont. And the document that I shared with you all is a draft collection development policy. The working group on the status of libraries in Vermont knows that the department is interested in updating our collection development policy and did include a recommendation that in statute, the department be required to have such a policy. For those of you who are on or who have been on library boards, you know that public libraries around the state, that the best practice is to have a collection development policy. And what happens is we can then rely on the policy to guide us. And when there might be a question about the inclusion of an item in the collection, we can look back to the collection development policy and say, does the selection match the normal process? Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. You know, this is how we can set up a good framework for handling individual questions or concerns that are raised by members of the public. It also helps to guide our staff so that they're not just free floating and wondering what it is we're trying to do with our collections. It also helps the public to understand our collections. Sometimes members of the public might think that the Department of Libraries has just a giant collection, bigger than all of the public libraries, and our scope is actually different. We have a different mission with our collection, and this is a way to articulate that. So this is a draft policy. Our team at the department is still working on it. As with any policy that I would bring forward, I would also want to get some guidance to be sure that what I'm suggesting for policy fits within the framework of our statute. And I wanted to bring this to you for your advice and for your review. While you don't set policy, the Board of Libraries in Vermont is different from a public library board. In a public library, per statute, the library trustees are responsible for establishing policy. Your role as the Vermont Board of Libraries is an advisory role, but I really want to get your advice and insight into what our team has drafted to check with you, sort of like a gut check. Or does this make sense? Does this sound right? Are there areas you'd like to see? Are there any comments or thoughts you have about what we've written? I am seeing the need for a serial comma after gender identity in the second paragraph. So I just want to let you know that's my bugaboo and somehow I missed it. So if you did see other grammatical errors or if you had questions, it just doesn't really make sense to you as you're reading it. What are we talking about? I'd love to get your insight because we want this to be a high level, broad statement that captures the intention of our policy. And we do want this to be a guiding policy for all of the selection criteria and selection processes for the more discrete collections like the Able Library collection. And so I do have a second thing that first I'll gather your feedback on the collection development policy, and then we can look at the selection process for the local recording program of the Able Library. And I do want to encourage you. I know, Adrian, you've got a question, so I'm gonna just ask the chair to call on folks. And happy to entertain your questions and to hear from all of you.
And I have one question, Kathy. Will this be, if we ever get around to, and I'll be gone, to deal with the advisory policy for other libraries, the 185 libraries around the state? We've never looked at that as long as I've been on, and we probably do.
Oh,
This would probably be a part of, could be used as part of that.
so I think
Just advisory to the rest of the state, yes.
Right. I think that this policy is really specific to the Department of Libraries, but the overall way that we develop it and what it's looking like and some of the language of it may be useful to the department as we go through the rulemaking, as we anticipate that we will go through a rulemaking process to update the standards for public libraries all around the state. There is they're either, I'm not sure actually, and I need to check the legislative calendar after the meeting today to see, or the legislative bills that have been brought. I have heard that there will be a bill in Senate Education related to the working group, and I'll mention, we can talk about that more in the state librarians report topic. But the draft bill that I've seen from one of the senators does include a recommendation that the department be able to update the rules related to public libraries in the state. It also, the draft bill I've seen recommends that each public library have a current collection development policy, and that the department be able to be authorized to develop model policies for public
Mhm.
libraries. Right now, we sort of point the public libraries toward other public libraries, but developing a model public library policy for our state is something we may be authorized to do by statute after the session. It's really, who knows how a bill will go, but that's a possibility. So our idea is for ourselves, if we had a challenged material, we want our policy to be updated. And it's a good idea to review these periodically, and that's why we're bringing it forward right now. So we can
Okay.
be well positioned and not be saying, well, you need to do it, but we don't need to do it. We like to do the hard work as well, so that we're kind of a
Okay.
model for others.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the term I
whoops,
want
I
to
have my
stay
hand
the state
raised.
standard. Okay, yeah, Adrian. Yep.
All right. Wonderful. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kathy, for the thorough explanation of the goals of the document, and wonderful. This has come out of the working group for libraries, and to look into this, and for seeking the input of the board in our advisory role. That's wonderful. I would like to make two comments. One is in terms of the type of document, and then I want to talk about the content. The type of document, it would be helpful. On this document, you have draft January 9th, 2024 on the bottom right. It would be helpful to have the date that if there's any modifications, like you brought up about the serial comma, that if there are changes, then I can identify, because right now I think it's identifying the date that we're discussing it and it's prepared for, and you can include that date, but also maybe when there's changes. So if I'm looking at a document in early January, I know it's different from March, or if they're the same. It's very hard to evaluate if there are any modifications to this draft. So I would recommend that as a change, to, especially when documents are dropped into an Outlook calendar. I can tell if there have been changes or not. That would be helpful. So that was one recommendation. And the second is the contents. To be able to review this, it's helpful to have, for the board members to have time to review this material, and to have some time and then notified when it's available. That is helpful. Just pointing out, okay, they are, so like today, there was an email sent with attachments, including this one. It would be helpful if that email is an effective way of distributing the material, so we know when it's dropped into that. My concern with Outlook is that there are some limitations, that it doesn't notify if there's any changes. So I could be accepting a meeting and not knowing that there's going to be additional material for me to review. I'm thankful and grateful for the department to being on the top of things to update the website. And that is always a resource for us. But it's helpful for the board members to be able to have a productive meeting, that I can review this document and have time to think about it and consider, and to give you break feedback. It's a little harder when it comes last minute. So
Yeah, and yeah,
those are
had
my
the
two
media,
content for the content to evaluate, to provide that advisory role. And sometimes, things do take time, and things come up in drafts, they can come in stages. And if there's updates, like a meeting with someone, that's fine to add that as well to the record. It's important, and not having that information. Okay, so those are my two comments.
I'd say we probably should put it on the agenda for the April meeting. to go over it
I'd,
because
I'd be happy to do that. I do want to respond for a minute, Adrian. The documents have been posted on the Board of Libraries website, and I would ask all members, typically the week before, at the very least, we get documents up by Friday. There was a very similar draft to this that was posted the prior week, and I do want to share that per open meeting law, there's actually no requirement that the department provide documents in advance in that way. I know that you're used to my practice, which I brought with me from California because of California's Sunshine Act. But I doubt that in the past you were seeing all of the documents before from what our department has said. So
we were
here
not.
I'm-
We were
I'm
just got
striving
used to it.
actually
That's
meet
all.
the goal. Yeah, if I can share, I do feel a little bit like I'm striving to exceed open meeting law, but I'm kind of getting my wrist slapped. So that feels different than I expected. My thought isn't that every piece of feedback needs to be shared today. I do like the idea of discussing it again at our April meeting if you need more time to review. But I do, I did send the meeting to everyone with their current address. And I think, Adrian, you had shared that you have some issues with Outlook. And I would recommend you talk with ADS about those because I confirmed in our emails last week and then also again this morning that after you reached out to Josh with the same concern that I did actually use the correct email for you. So if you're having issues with your state of Vermont, I wouldn't be shocked because some of us are experiencing some issues as well. I can certainly try to do the emails. When documents are changed, the challenge that I've had, to be frank, and if I hope that some of you have had the chance to look at our at my report, we are currently down an executive assistant, and I am my executive assistant. So if any board members wish to help with, and Adrian, maybe this is a great role for you as vice chair,
Yeah.
and you can all talk about that. If somebody wants to help with the communications in advance, I would certainly be open to that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to discuss it further. Yeah, my concern is more like on the public record side that when you have a Outlook calendar, you have an invitation and you're adding documents, those can be uploaded or taken down at any time. I don't need to know like minutia of like when things are changed. It's more of when you can add or subtract documents. And if someone's seeking that information in the future, it's not a fixed record, it's transitory. Versus like an email, it's fixed. Like when you send an email, it has a fixed timestamp with the, oh. Yeah. Okay, yes. Yeah, I think it's important to work kind of through these things because it's important to know where we need to look and when we need to look. And I think referring back to the
Absolutely.
public website is fine with if the documents are
Yeah.
uploaded up there, that's fine. It's in the Outlook is fine to add them because it's for convenience for board members. But it's not, Outlook is not providing another notice to members, especially if you've accepted a meeting. That's what I had accepted a meeting. I didn't get any emails. I didn't even get, yeah. So I'm not getting a notification that everyone else is getting, or maybe not all members are getting. So I want even distribution of information. If sending an email saying it's up on the website, that's fine. And I just want the timestamp on the document itself so I can know that, okay, I can clarify that, okay, so this is the latest.
Yeah, this, I put, while you were talking, Adrian, I'm sorry if it was distracting, I popped up our Board of Libraries
Perfect.
website.
Yeah,
And for
I
those of
love
you who
that.
are able to see it, these documents will not change. So if you came back and if there were changes made to the draft based on today's meeting, the one that we looked at on January 8th would persist. And the one that we look at on April 9th would be a new document. And you can see that through other documents we may have looked at. An example from the past would be the geographic names procedure. I'm not going to go back and change the July 12th geographic names procedure from the
No, it's a
revisions,
fixed
even though we
record.
had new ones on 8/12. So that's the practice. I understand your concern, and I just want to share what we've been doing. The public record is the website.
Yeah, and then I think writing an email like a week earlier would be helpful to say, hey, the documents are up on the website for your review. That would be helpful to us. Because otherwise in Outlook it's hidden. It's fine to have it in there, but it doesn't notify that there's been additions. I think that would be helpful for board members to have an email from the state librarian, secretary, or a representative of the Department of Libraries saying documents have been added to the website for your review for our meeting next week. It's fine if things are added later. But having an expectation of when to look for the materials is helpful, because should I be looking at Monday night before the meeting? Should I be looking at a week earlier? And there's also a delay with working with the chair too, getting that preliminary draft. That loop needed to be closed before making the material available for all board members to see the official agenda. And it does say in the bylaws that the agenda shall be distributed to the members as close to 10 days as possible when practical. Now, of course, things come up and there's also a supplemental material. But having time to review that document makes this meeting more effective, like more productive. We have time to review and then we can discuss what you're presenting to us, because then we have time to see it.
I would say one, and I'll ask Kathy to clarify on this. We as individual board members, you can always email Kathy with any comments or whatever. What you can't do is send it to all of us.
And that
That's-
happens as well. That happens
Yeah.
with Linda's email. And that's the only reason why I even knew of that agenda, that email was sent, was because of her reply to the original state librarian's email.
Yeah, you can say like Linda did, I can't attend the meeting, or those things that are not our comments on policy or whatever. But especially for the new members for the open meeting law, you can email me and say, I think we should have something on the agenda dealing with such and such. You can't it can't be a quorum. So that's why there's an admonition in the open meeting law about doing reply to all, because that's a public record. But you can do individually, or you can, send
It's
me
Outlook a
or.
public record? Is it a fixed public record? That's my
Yes, it
essential
is.
question.
Every time that I send I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just
Yeah.
I've had my hand up.
Yeah.
The emails that you're receiving as an Outlook invitation are emails. They are just that. I can produce them and they are emails and they each have different attachments. And my recollection is that this agenda, the change I made this morning was just to put in the direct links, as I said, that they would be provided before the meeting. And they had been posted online. That's what changed on this. I
Well,
do want to clarify I'd like to
Sent
complete
it in an email.
I'd like to just complete my thought.
Yep.
Um,
Okay, go Kathy.
The point of this topic on the agenda is not really procedural as far as how the department operates as noticing folks about things. And I think Tom and Adrian, if you have a process that you would prefer and you as chair and co-chair, let me know what that is. I'm happy to follow it. You are all able to email with each other and with me regarding agenda items and agenda building. The public meeting law precludes discussion of items on the agenda and discussion of library matters that are not on the agenda. But you are absolutely able to discuss agenda items, to share them with Tom, to share ideas with Tom directly, to poke at him or to ask him, have you seen the agenda? You are all able to communicate with each other, either in a group about the agenda or with me. Please use your vermont.gov or your partner.gov email address. I would like to kind of get back to if we
Yeah,
could, given that our
please.
time is limited, get back to getting
Yes.
feedback about the actual content, if that's
Mhm.
possible.
Please. Yes. Okay, anybody have any other comments on the collection development? What you would like to see or whatever? And the reason, especially the ones from the south, there have been, various libraries that have might have had some issues about what books were in there and all of that. And that's why I really like to have not folks from around the state. What are you seeing in your area? Because that's another thing I think that the library board is crucial to do. It gives Kathy feedback from other parts of the state. eyes and ears. What's going on out there? And I think that,
Tom,
in your
Lisa
local
had her
town.
hand raised.
Oh, okay, Lisa,
just
yes,
FYI.
please. I can't see that. I don't know that. So just, yes, yes.
No,
you
no,
can- Yeah,
I apologize.
okay, Lisa.
I like this. It's really short, you know. I think that I see a lot of really long-winded policies where I work, and I can appreciate that it's short and sweet. And I wondered if you guys had used, if there had been a previous collections development policy, or if you had used some guidelines from other places to create this one, or just kind of curious about the creation of it.
Sure. I'd actually like to call on Assistant State Librarian Tom McMurdo. He oversees our state library collection, and he worked on drafting this policy. So Tom has come on camera, and I think he can speak to your question, Lisa. Thank you.
Yeah, we looked at probably the main thing that we looked at was the state curator's policy for the state of Vermont. So if you look at that, you'll see some similarities with this. I also looked at, we also looked at the San Francisco Public Library policy just as a comparative. Of course, looking at our old policy, which was a bit lengthy, it was 18 pages. So we felt that brevity would be a little more appropriate and useful in this current environment. Also taking into consideration some of the elements that I think are underpinning intellectual freedom in this country, which are the 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law, the part that applies to that. Also, the Civil Rights Act of, I always get the year wrong, I think it was 1964. There's some other elements out there in terms of basic federal rights that folks have that underpin this as well. And so I think, yeah, so I've gone a little further than answering just your question, but we were considering a number of different factors there and had looked at other policies and felt that in light of our previous policy that a policy that was a little more short and sweet and to the point would be better for the department and better for everyone, actually.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think it's easy to understand, and it seems to fit the requirement, you know, as far as my limited, you know, experience can say.
Yeah, anybody else about development? How's it going on in your libraries? And I gotta, my phone won't tell the time because I have the speech turned off, Kathy. How are we doing for time to the next? You have your report coming up.
Oh, sure. Right now it's 10:58. After I get feedback on this policy, I wanted to also share the Able Library selection process rather for their local
Okay,
recording
right.
program.
Okay, good enough.
Okay.
Yep.
Tom, I can add, so the resources on here, do you want to add more? If you were using like the state of Vermont's state curator, collection development, other resources, do you want to add those as well? Or what
Adrian, is
the-
there an area where you're suggesting something be added? I'm sorry, can you be specific about the section you're referring to?
On page 2, there's resources, and if you sought out more resources, do you want to include them or do you not want to include that section?
I think that the reason that I think this is just information that we're sharing with you right now, and that the resources might not actually make it into the final draft. We do refer to the NLS collection building policy in here, I think. Actually,
You
wait,
do.
hold on a second. You're
In the
looking at the
first
second
paragraph.
document, which I haven't presented on yet. So can we, so the
Oh,
collection
sorry.
development policy, we don't have any additional.
Oh, wait,
resources.
sorry. I'm sorry. I had the
It's
wrong
okay.
page. I'm so
Sorry, I got lost too. They're paper clipped together and I was having trouble. So in the collection development policy, the only thing we're referring to is the VSA, the statutes. But if we're ready to move to the Able Library, I'd be
Yeah.
happy to kind of get, can I
Okay.
give an overview of that one and then we can take comments
Please.
on it? And
Absolutely.
I want to call on Karen Gravlin to be on screen if that's comfortable for Karen. And Karen, could you share with the board why we've developed this? For us, we'll have the policy and then we'll have specific collection processes with some of the criteria or selection processes. So Karen, can you share about why we went forward with this one first for the Able Library and what the expectations are from NLS, just to provide some context?
Sure. So at the Able Library, we have a local recording program, and it's meant to supplement the National Library Service collection that we have access to. So here in Vermont, we don't necessarily get to dictate what is in the NLS's collection, but we do get to add to it books that are of Vermont interest for our patrons. And so NLS wants us to have a local recording selection process sort of outlined for our patrons. And it's helpful for us because it's a little bit different than the rest of collection development because we rely on volunteers to record the narration of these audiobooks. And so sometimes we make decisions that are not necessarily based on the quality of the material. We also make decisions based on availability of our volunteers as well as their expertise. And so that's why that's more outlined in this particular procedure.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, so with this, the way that we envision these documents working together is that the collection development policy is the overarching guideline with the overarching ideas and purposes and how we're focusing our collections and things we're considering in all of the collections. And then within the different programs, including this program, the ABLE program, where we serve Vermonters directly, how is it that we determine, in this case, how to select a book that a Vermont volunteer will record either at home or in our ABLE studio? What are the things that we bear in mind? So for example, sometimes people who are students will come to us and ask us to record a textbook. That's something that's incredibly difficult to record and is outside of our normal scope. Normally, what Karen's team is doing is overseeing volunteers in adding to the Vermont specific collections that are available to Vermonters, and our materials get uploaded to the NLS. And so then the whole country can have access to a Vermont author's work or a work about Vermont. So they usually have this Vermont focus. And while somebody may need a biology textbook, that book would really be outside the scope of our recording program. So if there were a Vermont history textbook, we might record it. And that's why we say we don't typically record textbooks or general reference materials, manuscripts, or unpublished works. But certainly if there was like the Vermont Constitution, we might, there are things that we might, or a reference book about Vermont history. Of course, we might decide, well, that's enough about Vermont that we would make an exception here. A textbook for that a student, a third grader, third to fifth grade textbook about Vermont history. Maybe it's worth recording that one because of the Vermont connection. So this helps to explain tough decisions to people. I think that's part of our goal here. And it also really articulates who's responsible for selecting things. So that the professional staff of the department, Karen specifically, as the ABLE Library Director, is ultimately responsible for the selection of titles. And that we do bear in mind, like we could have competing needs for the time in the recording studio or for the recording equipment with limited volunteers, that Karen and her team will make decisions about which things can be recorded and where they are in the priority list. So the way that I envision this working is that we'd have the collection development policy first, and then we'll have additional documents such as this ABLE library one that sort of fall within a collection development manual or procedure book for our team to use. And other members of the team will work on their areas. So Vermont the Vermont State Library would be Tom and the info services team working on more details about what types of specific things they include in their Vermontiana collection or in their public policy collection. Jonathan working on the youth collection, Karen working with Jonathan on the inclusive youth collection, things of that nature that we envision will have a number of different policies. I'm sorry, a number of different selection criteria that kind of roll up and fit within the whole general context of our policy. But only the first document would be the policy. These would be more like the practices of the department. So I think I want to try to answer the question that you had, Adrian, about the inclusion of the resources. In this case, we probably would list the resource in the final draft. We would probably list the resource of the National Library Service because we're referring to it in the document. And we would probably, in a PDF of this, include a link to the collection development policy for Vermont because that's the resource that is mentioned in here too. So it's not like an encyclopedic resource of how did we get these policies. Libraries kind of borrow and steal and beg from each other all the time, and there's not that much variation in library criteria and selection processes. You know, Tom mentioned San Francisco Public, but we also looked at Boston and New York and all, others. And I know that various folks are working now on another one of our important documents. Kevin Unrath is taking the lead with our retention policy and our challenge documents as far as what would be the process if a Vermonter was concerned about an item in our collection or wanted it moved to a different section or something of that nature. So we'll continue developing these. So Karen's document is sort of an example of what we're still developing to submit to NLS to meet their requirement. And then we are also going to keep working on the collection development policy from the department. We could bring more items back to you for review at the April meeting if you'd like.
Yeah, I was going to include in that on the textbooks there, though those of you who aren't familiar with it, I've been using recording. There's also, it's called Allied Reading, I think now, I can never, Learning Ally, I think it's called. It used to be called Recordings for the Blind, and then it was Recordings for the Blind and Dyslexic, and then they branched out a little bit more, and that's for textbooks. And of course, under the Americans with Disabilities Act and Education of All Children with Disabilities Act, the schools are responsible for a lot of that information. So there are specific resources for textbooks, and the schools have deals, and they can get a lot of times the text versions of textbooks right from the publisher. Have to buy them, go to the bookstore and pay $200 for a 3-page booklet. But there are other resources. And so as Karen might be able to say, NLS's policy is basically for what would be in your public library. History, nonfiction, fiction of mass reading. Am I correct on that, Karen? On sort of a broad, not a specific textbook, but for a broader use.
Yes, Tom, you're correct. So the Able Libraries collection is meant to mirror what one might find in a local public library. And most public libraries don't include textbooks in their collections. And you're right in that there are other resources out there for students who are looking for audio versions of learning materials.
All right, okay. Okay, any questions? Kathy, or Karen on this? Okay, if not, we can go over to the next one there. Kathy,
Is that
which
the state librarian's report, Tom?
Yeah, I believe that's the next on the agenda here.
Okay, so we're at agenda item 8.
8, I think it is, yeah.
The state librarian's report. And I shared this out with you yesterday evening, and I'm hopeful that you were able to read it. If you weren't, I'm happy to go through it in more depth. So I just wanted to check before I start presenting on this topic board members, did you have a chance to review it already, or would you like me to kind of walk through each of the points for you? We have time today for me to do the latter. It's 11:09.
I think walking through the report is helpful. Because
Okay,
if it's
great.
sent after business hours, it was just a couple hours today to review that material. So,
Sure.
I was
Okay,
able to
I
review it,
will-
but going through it would be fine.
Okay, great.
well, so is that the
so-
expectation that we're reading it? Like,
Oh, she's not, I don't
Such
think she's
a
reading, just going through your report. Now, Kathy
Yeah,
will stuff.
I do, yeah. I do want to share that I did check the open meeting law requirements with regards to meeting agendas, and the
Mhm.
requirement for open meeting law is that they be posted 48 hours prior to a regular meeting, and there is no requirement about supporting documents such as this one. So I want to assure you as board members that we are meeting open meeting law requirements. And if I'm able to send a report in advance, given the work that I have, I will, but if not, then I'm happy to present like I will today. So either way, you will get my report. Typically with other bodies that I meet with, I give them a report like as it's happening. But this is, I'm happy to share the report from January 9th today with you all. So as we had let you know that we would, the working group on the status of libraries in Vermont issued our report to the House and Senate committees on Education on November 1st, 2023. I think someplace in this building, there may be hardbound copies, which will be circulating through interlibrary loan. This is a spiral bound copy, which I now carry with me at all times in case somebody wishes to have me testify on it. It is quite hefty. And I want to share what the intention is of the report. I don't think anybody I don't expect anybody to read this whole document, and certainly not you all as Board of Libraries members. If you do have time, the executive summary, which starts on page 16, is really a good summary of the report, I think, and what we heard overall. Then the recommendations to the legislature begin on page 21, and the recommendations to the department begin on page 24. So those first 26 pages are really the meat of the report. And what I would recommend is looking at those would help you to understand kind of a synopsis of what we heard over more than 2 years of meetings. The meetings were really a Herculean effort. We met for roughly 5 hours per meeting. It was a really engaged committee, and I am really grateful to all of them for their work. And we were tasked with reporting on nearly every aspect of library service in Vermont's public schools and academic libraries. So it was a huge scope of work. And this report is broken down, just as our meetings were, into different discrete sections that we were tasked with studying per the establishing legislation. And in addition to extending my warm, complete, and utter thanks to the folks who served as working group members, I also want to take this opportunity to publicly thank the Department of Libraries staff who contributed to the success of the study. Folks in our team presented on topics of their subject expertise. So for example, when the working group met on the topic of continuing education, we called in Joy Warland to explain to us, what's the context for this? What is going on already in the state? How does that work? We called on Karen on the topic of inclusive services. We really brought in, these are just examples, we brought in people to talk about all of the various components from their expertise area as consultants. We also had many, many experts present to us. So I'm very grateful to the whole team for their work. I want to say a special thank you to Josh Muse. Josh, wave your arms and do something there on screen, because Josh is our statistics fellow, and Josh is always gathering data for the public library service. Always be gathering data is the t-shirt we should make for him. He's getting reports all the time. He's checking in with people. He's trying to get the highest completion rate that we can on that so that we have good statistical information to support the work of the department. And Josh not only provided his fellow consultants with some numbers to support their topic areas for their reports, Josh also went through the entire report and updated it with the most recent public library survey at the end, which was just an enormous effort that took place over the summer, fall. So thank you, Josh, for that. So I wanted to just kind of call out that great work that the consultants did. And I also want to express my extreme gratitude to Jeanette Schaefer and Tom McMurdo for their assistance in scheduling the meetings, thinking about which experts and which staff topics and staff presenters would fit, and then in helping with the writing of the report. Taking the information that the working group members had presented with some quotes and some ideas and the things that resonated on each of the topics, and helping with kind of creating that cohesive chapter on each of the themes. And finally, Lily Talbert, I don't know how she did it, but she got us on track and got that report into its formatted, proofread state and out the door. Since the report was published, I've been interviewed on 2 occasions by Vermont Public. I included those links in the document so that if you haven't heard them, that you can. It's always a little embarrassing for me to hear myself on the radio, but apparently they were playing clips of it and getting the word out about libraries. At one of the visits with public radio staff, I went into the Vermont Public office, which was really neat for me to be able to have that opportunity. And we were joined on the phone by Christopher Kaufman Ilstrup, who I just noticed I'm going to need to edit I forgot the Ilstrup in the first page. Oh, I'm sorry, Christopher. Christopher and I met with Michaela Lafrac, and we had a really good conversation. There was also an interview that was focused on social services and safety in libraries that aired on December 18th. And then to my surprise, the Education Committee of the House called me in on their first day, the first hour that the legislature was open. So last Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And I do need to say, prepping for that did take some of my time that normally I would have been focused on getting your documents to you in time. So I appreciate your patience there. But I was really pleased to hear that they were interested in our work, and we do expect to see some legislation coming out of it. We also, on the 22nd of December, presented an overview of the report, very similar to the one that I gave to the House Committee on Education to the whole community. And Senator Ruth Hardy joined me in that call and sharing information about the formation of the report and also what steps she was taking, because I understand she'll be bringing some legislation along with Senator Gulick of Senate Education. Next up, I want to just share that we had reports come in. We reached out to libraries to ask them about whether or not they had any damage from the storm on December 18th, because we had such significant library impacts from the July storms over the summer. And many thanks to Jeanette's team, and I think particularly to Kevin Unrath for checking in with folks and gathering information. We were really glad that there was no significant damage from the storm reported to the department. And well, no significant damage by public libraries that was reported. One school, Moortown Elementary School, reported some water intrusion during the December storm, and thankfully staff were on site and they were able to move books to higher shelves, and insurance covered the furnishing and the carpet replacement. I was so happy to hear that when we got back to work on the 2nd of January, two of our staff members, April Shaw and Kevin Unrath, had volunteered to assist the Moortown Elementary School library in reshelving books and moving furniture back in place. Now, this library is really close to April's heart because her son goes to the school. And so she knew that they were, I don't know, April, I don't know how you found out, and you can feel free to come on screen, both Kevin and April, and explain how you knew this was happening, but they participated in the all hands on deck effort to help students to kind of get back to normal at the library after the flooding. So what a great way to start the year, finding out that our department staff were kind of library heroes. On New Year's Day, you did it, Kevin, is that true? On New Year's Day in April?
Yeah, so April knows the librarian there, Nancy, and connected us and helped us figure that out. But I should leave it to you, April, because you were also searching for your son's water bottle that had been missing for a long time. So it was a twofer.
It was a twofer. Yes, I've known Nancy for a while because my son is in second grade there. So I think it's a great little library. And I did find the water bottle, so that worked.
Oh, wow. That is awesome. I didn't know about the water bottle intrigue. Mysterious disappearance of Jack's water bottle. Well, thank you both. What a great way to spend the new year. And you didn't do it while you were on the clock, but I feel like you really represented the department and state of Vermont so well. It just is so awesome that you jumped in that way and took that initiative to help. I want to share a quick update about two of our grant programs. One of them is the Fiber Connect grants. We are decommissioning the Fiber Connect network, and the libraries that are on the network now or who were on the network as of, I think, July 2022 are eligible for grants associated with that wind down. The department has been an internet service provider, and it's not a great fit, and we weren't able to secure funding to replace the full network. But what we have been able to do is to issue grants to libraries to support them in transitioning off of our Fiber Connect network and onto their local internet service providers. And a big thanks to Josh and Tom and Lucy in the Department of Libraries for making that happen. I understand that as of yesterday, all but 8 of the libraries eligible for the grants have applied for the funds, and that we've been kind of poking and prodding at the other ones to get their grants in progress. Another grant update is that we are, and this is related to the staffing update, so I'll roll them together. The department had some trouble filling our building program manager 5 position. We posted it twice over the summer and the fall, and we've posted it again, and we have an open recruitment for that now, and we have some good candidates. We also have moved forward with interviewing for our, trying to remember the exact name, it's a capital projects grant specialist position. So those 2 recruitments are active. If you've been looking for me, Tom, or Jeanette in the past couple of weeks, Jeanette has been scheduling, and we have been conducting interviews like they're going out of style around here. So we have been interviewing folks for those positions to get them on board so that we can really launch our public library capital projects and have capacity to do that. Because right now, Jeanette, Tom, and I are doing that in addition to our regular assignments. So the capital library, the public library capital projects update is that we are aiming to open the grant application for the $16.4 million Coronavirus Capital Projects Fund from the U.S. Department of Treasury later in January. So this month, we hope to get the grants open to the community, and we'll always host a webinar at the beginning as we launch those grant programs to make sure everybody's aware of it. And on the topic of our staffing update, we think we'll probably launch that and then have the staff come on board and help with evaluating the grants. We're really hopeful we'll fill those positions this recruitment. And those are both limited service full-time positions associated with those capital projects and funded by the capital projects. Since we last met, I found out that 2 of our staff have moved on to other positions. So our executive staff assistant, Gina Rubin, has moved to a permanent position in the Secretary of State's office. And Lucy Fortier, our contracts and grants administrator, is moving over to a promotional opportunity that she has been offered with Vermont Community Broadband. It's a really exciting position. When she was talking about it, she was just lighting up. So we're really, we will miss Lucy. Her last day is Friday. And we do miss Gina, but we've been kind of moving along as well as we can, kind of preparing for and then handling those vacancies. So there's just been a lot going on here in the department, and we appreciate everyone's patience at this time. And thanks to Jeanette and Tom's constant good work. We are either interviewing or making new interview questions, or hopefully soon we'll be doing some checking of references to really fill these positions as quickly as possible so that we can be up to full staff again. And I didn't put this in the report, but I do want to share some really exciting news. And Lauren Kelly, I think you may have something in your work area if you're at work today. If anybody's in the info and access area, are you? Is anybody there? I feel like we need to share the biggest update of the department's exciting life. Oh, Lauren's not in the building. Okay, well, I'll tell you without the visual. The Department of Libraries did happen to win the worst song ever contest. It was not just among librarians. It was a contest that took place in Barrie at the Canadian Club. We formed a band and we participated and we won, I kid you not, a golden toilet seat. So that is on display. A sparkly golden #1 toilet seat is on display in the info and access room. And each person who was a member of the band gets to keep it at their desk. I just delivered it down to info because Lauren hasn't had it yet. Lauren Kelly is our singer. Our band, she sang the worst song ever, which this year was Hot Child in the City. If you don't know that song, I don't recommend listening to it because it will get stuck in your head. Tom McMurdo had this idea that we should do this, and so he played drums and he was our ringleader. Lauren is a really accomplished singer and she just nailed it. Jeanette was the backup singer and she also was into the theatrical performances, and you would not believe it. I'll share, it's not library related really, so I'll share a link to the video with board members after the meeting so you can kind of hear and witness, experience this insanity. I was the bass player. Josh Muse was our intrepid videographer, but we actually beat 10 other bands. So yeah, talented staff. And we also had a really great winter holiday party here at our building to celebrate the year together. And we did a potluck, and I've heard that the potluck was the best potluck ever. So we had so much food that it was just a lot of fun. And we had folks from the Agency of Administration come to spend the afternoon with us. Secretary Clauser and Sean Brown from AOA came to our potluck and joined us, which was really just fun. So we are pretty low key. We ate and we played games together, and the morale is good here despite some departures of some of our staff. So we're all still having a lot of fun working together. And that is the end of my report, and I'm happy to take questions or comments.
Thank you, Kathy. This is your chance, folks. If you have any questions, what's going on there? Any leftovers, by the way? Yeah, no.
Raise my hand.
Oh, James's hand is up.
Okay.
Yes,
Go ahead, James.
I did. First of all, I gotta say thank you for bringing the humanity to this meeting, Catherine. And but I was kind of confused. It seemed like a kind of a contradiction that y'all are such a talented staff, but you want a toilet seat. So I didn't really kind of get the connection.
Well, it's the worst song ever, so it's not the best song ever. So the contest
Okay.
is one that pre-pandemic started here in the Barrie area, and it's bands playing the song they think is the worst as well as they can. And so usually the worst song is because it has really awful lyrics, and ours certainly did. And so we played our hearts out. We practiced on Tuesday evenings, and after work, this did not impact our work time at all. We practiced in Tom's basement, and first our band was very small, but we tried to get more people involved in it, and we had a great time together. And we are also, I was going to start ukulele club last week, our Wednesday ukulele club, but then I got called in by the legislature. So I think we're probably going to need to start ukulele club tomorrow or maybe next week, so we have time to prepare. But we have a lot of talented folks, but a lot of people who just kind of enjoy being silly together in our free time as well. So yeah, the toilet seat, it just is sort of ironic, I think. I hope.
Well,
But it's ours for a year, James. So after the meeting, Josh, I'd like you to bring James to Info and Access and show him the toilet seat. It's near the heart
I'd
that
like
we
to-
won for participating in our, for doing such a great job last year in the Vermont Shares. Oh, and this year we did really, really well with Vermont Shares, and we had over 90% of staff participating. And so we had an ice cream floatapalooza. So board members, I can't invite all of you to these types of things at once, but if anybody thinks this sounds fun, we'd be happy to welcome you to in small groups to one of our activities so you can meet the staff when it's a little bit more casual. And then Jennifer has her hand up.
Oh, just sorry. It sounds like it was great fun. Overall, how has the response been to the working group report? I did go through a little bit, and I know there's a video that's available. I believe that Joy Warland put out. So I've just started that. So I'll certainly be watching that so I could get your expertise and how you viewed it. But just overall, what was the reaction?
I think that the reaction has been very positive. I think it's hard for folks to hear the conclusion of the working group that services in Vermont's public libraries are not really equitable at the moment. But
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of consensus around some of the ways to potentially improve that. The working group is really, and certainly here at the department, it's a little bit tricky because I'm both the department head and the working group chair. So if I'm speaking as the working group chair or the department head, I try to make that distinction because the working group has things in its report that may not be completely aligned with the views of the department. And so just bear that in mind.
Yeah.
The department really is aware of the need to be staying within our budgetary framework as set forth by the
Got it.
governor in his budget plan, because we're part of AOA and we realize there are a lot of competing priorities. The working group members also recognize that there are a lot of competing priorities. And so there are some things that are kind of very low cost or no cost fixes in statute. And those were things that everybody sort of thought, well, these are things, even if there's no additional funding, we could probably make some big changes in those ways. And then a lot of the focus of the kind of more expensive items were really looking at shared resources that every Vermonter and every library could access, and areas where things could be boosted if there were resources available. Given the other competing resources, it's really not clear. As your state librarian, I would say it's really not clear which of those, if any, the legislature will champion, and which, how those, even if there is a need in libraries, is it a more important need than some of the other needs, such as housing, food,
Yeah.
security, opioid response, public safety? I'm gonna put a bill in the chat right now, which has been introduced now. The language of the bill is in the second chat, and that was introduced in the end by Senators Hardy, Gulick, Clarkson, Harrison, Perchlik, Watson, White, and Renner. So that's quite a lot of folks to sign on as the sponsors of the bill. And so it will be interesting to see how this progresses and what aspects of it move over to the House, and what eventually lands on the governor's desk and what is done with it.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
It was a great work, really. It's quite amazing.
It seemed impossible. Like so many of the things on our plates right now, they can seem impossible. So our plan is just to kind of break down the work into little sections and work together on it as well as we can. We have a lot of great staff in the department, and we have a lot of amazing libraries in the community. And we're really fortunate to be among so many people who care so deeply about libraries in our state.
I'll ask a question here, Kathy. So the stated policy of the state is dealing with opioid addiction and that, and also in this group in the statements, it was the problem that the librarians are tending to have to deal with a lot more social issues. So they would join together, would they not? So,
Well, I certainly think that improvements in the overall response statewide would have for drug addiction and also mental health challenges that the members of the public have. Those would certainly, any overall impact on moving the needle collectively would certainly have a positive impact on the climate at any public building, including public libraries. We have heard a lot from public libraries, and this is what was being highlighted in that second interview that aired on December 18th on Vermont Public, that social service needs are really kind of disrailing things in libraries at times. I think the overall sentiment is, of course, libraries are still safe places to be with your family, and people still are having story time and having kids come in and having class visits and knitting groups. And I would say the overall atmosphere is still good, but there are times when the behavior at a library location may be unusual and may be really challenging to manage for library staff. The working group heard about those topics during our social services conversation because they usually are a medical issue such as drug addiction or mental health, or people experiencing homelessness, people experiencing food insecurity, and just the challenges some Vermonters are facing kind of ratchets up their need level and their how quickly they may be getting upset, and it may be challenging to have the library stay kind of the calm, welcoming space. I think libraries are doing a lot to kind of continue services and to try to stabilize things for the community, though. And in the department, we're trying to offer some continuing education to help people to kind of refresh and come back fresh each day, and then also think about aspects of some of the safety components in the space and how to set things up a little bit more safely. Even things like changing sight lines or welcoming everybody who comes in can really help with behavior sometimes in a library. Or thinking about staffing, having volunteers come in to support the library, and having some of the board members volunteer in the evening or weekend hours so staff aren't working alone. Things of that nature can be things that can be helpful.
yes, and then the consultants give help. Yeah, that's what they're there for, right? To give help libraries, give them ideas what they can do.
Tom, Jennifer
Yeah.
had her hand up at one
Oh,
point. I don't know if she
Jennifer.
still has a
Okay.
comment, or was that prior?
That was prior.
Oh, that was prior.
Yeah.
Anybody else questions before it's time to just about wrap up here? No other comments or questions of Kathy, and then we can proceed. I forgot, I do have on my computer.
11:37.
11:37. I can do it without having my Google Home Mini yelling over at me. I can do it discreetly. Okay, so final wrap up. We have our next meeting is in April, the second Tuesday in the month, from 10 to 12. There are anything specific areas anybody really would have concerns about, wants more information about, that we can make sure that we could bring in on the agenda? And anytime you can always call me or email me or Kathy to add.
Yeah.
Will the
Tom,
meeting be
so
in
are
person?
you visiting? Oh,
I'm sorry.
there are two questions at the same time. Are we revisiting anything from today, or we didn't need to, like the collection development policy? We discussed the, like discussing it further, but I don't think we're doing that now. Just clarity on that.
I would say no. What's your view,
Yeah.
Kathy? I would
Yeah.
say no, because everybody has a chance
Yes.
now to review. Kathy saw the lawyer
Presented.
yesterday, right? With the policy, looking at it. So that's the good draft, and then we can look at it in April, and people can
Yeah.
look at it.
I do want to share, there could be updates to documents because again, the board's an advisory board and not it's not something that's coming to you for approval. You know, I always get appropriate counsel on key documents and I get that counsel not just from legal counsel, but also from my supervisors at the Agency of Administration. If there are any changes, it will be posted as a different document for the next meeting and as much in advance as is possible, given everybody else's meeting schedules. Because you know, to Tom's point, if I am able to meet with Agency of Administration on a Friday at 3 o'clock, and then I have our meeting on Tuesday, I may not always be able to give every document tons in advance.
Or it may not be necessary to provide us, because we've already fulfilled our role. We provided you feedback on what you saw. You were seeking input for us as an advisory role. So our role is done. You don't have to update us forever with the changes.
Well,
Yeah.
unless
And
people have
and
more
I also
comments next time. Yeah. I mean, there may be, if folks didn't have a chance to read the document this time, my sense, Adrian, was that people may not have had the chance to read the document before today. So then I think it would be great if people want to provide comment on it, that they let Tom and me know, so that as Tom and I build the agenda for April, that we do that. And so that you don't forget, maybe emailing in the next couple of days, and then we'll start the whole process. It just so that it doesn't fall off of your mind. If you do want to see that, any revisions come back, please do let me know. And Tom.
Or that that's a great process for anything that we provide. If you wanted to continue to discuss it, put it on the agenda for discussion. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, and that makes sense. And thank you for explaining what else is going on. There's a lot going on in the department. It's very exciting, but yes, it's time consuming, and yeah, you're coping with a lot of different demands. And there's a lot going on. So I have a lot of empathy and understanding.
Yes, like welcome back from the Christmas or from the holiday vacation. And by the way, you're going to report to the legislature, who has a determination over your budget for the next year. Yeah. Holidays over. Yeah. Fine. This time of the year is kind of rough anyway. So any other things anybody wants to bring up? If not, we'll end. Okay. I would say, and you could think, if we do want to meet in person, I think the April meeting, once again, Teams is a great way, especially for those of you that are a far distance away.
Or working.
Yeah, or working. Perhaps July, if you think if there's any time, or if you're quite happy with Teams. The visually impaired non-driver here loves Teams, but others like to meet, maybe once a year would be okay, either July or October, meeting. July, a lot of people, but yeah.
It's good to meet in person so we can get to know each other that way. And also Kathy had mentioned that perhaps there are opportunities with the Vermont Department of Libraries, that if there are informal meetings that perhaps the board members can join in, like the Floatapalooza, or so it'd be good to get to know, instead of just seeing everyone in a little rectangle, or hearing them from that rectangle, seeing them in 3 dimensions.
So we'll discuss that, but the April meeting, I think it's still a good time to meet with doing Teams. So, okay, if there are any other questions, you want to make any last statements, Kathy, or anything? Anybody?
No, just thank you to you all for your support and your advice. I really appreciate each of you.
Okay, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Okay. I don't know if that requires a second. Okay, it's required, and I know that's a non-debatable motion. So,
true.
Yeah, all in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And
Thanks so much.
anybody that's opposed can free to hang out as long as you want to. So anyway, see you all in April and hope to hear from you. And remember, the librarians are always